All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our community development meeting. It is August 17, 2023. The time is 9 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Matari and Duncan. Commissioner Brooks is excused. And are there any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing none. No opening remarks except for these are deliberations, so there's no testimony from the public this morning. And conflicts of interest? Any?
None.
Okay, none. And we'll go ahead with our first deliberation item, which is CUP 22-0017, Crossroads Storage. Vlad?
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I'll try to be as brief as possible. This request comes before you it's a request by Hughes Trust for the approval of a conditional use permit to establish a mini storage and rental warehouse facility. The subject property is located on the prairie just southwest of the intersection of Prairie Avenue and Maya Road. The 20-acre parcel on which the request is proposed was recently created through a large lot exemption. The applicant owns several tracts of land to the west of the subject property, and I think the total acreage that the Hughes Family Trust owns is approximately 103, 104 acres in size. The subject property is currently zoned agriculture, and the comp plan designation is transitional. The property is also located within the City of Post Falls exclusive tier, and we have certain standards under the exclusive tier guidelines in Article 10.7 of the Land Use and Development Code. In summary, the exclusive tier requires that all development within the exclusive tier of either City of Post Falls, Hayden, or Rathdrum must comply with the guidelines. Specifically, I think the primary requirement is that all future development have public sewer and public water connection. In most cases, when that occurs, the applicant likely has to annex the property because the cities do not allow connection without annexation. The initial request consisted of 15 storage buildings. Each building would be approximately between 5,000 and 21,000 square feet. There would also be an on-site office and caretakers facility. There would also be some outdoor storage on the southwest corner of the property. Domestic water supply and irrigation as well as fire flows would be provided by Ross Point Water. However, effluent discharge would be via septic and drain field, which is not consistent with the ACI requirements. During the initial City of Post Falls comments, the city stated that the proposal conflicts with the ACI agreement. The applicant has recently attempted to annex the property into the City of Post Falls. However, the city rejected that, and that's why the application moved forward with the county. The city also expressed some concerns over the extension of Killdeer Avenue with future connection with Maya Road, and that a public restroom would be required on site. And moreover, that the application would have to comply with Title 18 of the City of Post Falls Municipal Code. So immediately staff made contact with the applicant, advised them that based on the comments submitted by the City of Post Falls, we could not move forward with a recommendation of approval. And the applicant with their legal counsel prepared a document and revised the site plan to make all of the appropriate revisions in order to comply with the City of Post Falls. They had shifted a number of buildings and proposed future connection of Killdeer Avenue north of the subject development, but also bisecting the subject property and connecting with Maya Road, having the access come off of the north portion of development and connect with in location of where the future intersection of Killdeer Avenue would be with Maya Road. The only issue, the only outstanding issue, of course, was the effluent discharge, and it wouldn't be connecting to a public sewer main, but it would be treated by a septic and drain field on site. So in the follow-up comments, the city still stated that future development of this mini storage facility or any development on site would necessitate improvements to Killdeer Avenue. However, it's not required at this time. They also stated that this highway district would need to review the future intersection of Killdeer Avenue and Maya Road and access approach to the subject property, and that the project must comply with the municipal code landscaping requirements. And finally, right before we conducted a public hearing in front of the hearing examiner, the applicant, we received a statement that the applicant must enter into a consent to annexation agreement. And this came in the day before we conducted a public hearing from the hearing examiner. If you read the HE recommendation, staff's initial comments were, or initial recommendation was to deny their request because we were lacking that fourth item from the city. However, since that comment came in and it was presented at HE, the recommendation was to approve their request. These are some of the photos of the project site in question. It's fairly level. There's no vegetation on site, and I think it was used for some sort of a farming operation or agricultural pursuits at some point in the past, but it's no longer the case. We did receive comments from the remaining agencies. They're pretty straightforward. The highway district requested trip generation analysis, and it was submitted to them, and they no longer have any issues with it. They no longer have any issue with the access point being at the intersection of future connection of Killdeer Avenue with my road. Fire department requested that the roadway must meet the access standards for fire apparatus and also fire flows for all the buildings on site. A general comment from our building division. Panhandle Health District basically needs to approve a septic system on site. Sheriff Office approves of the request. Ross Point Water did provide a will serve letter, and Department of Environmental Quality just had their standard state regulations. During the public comment period, we received a total of 9 comments, 7 in support, 2 neutral. As I just stated, the hearing examiner did receive the latest comment from the city of Post Falls, and they subsequently submitted a recommendation of approval after hearing this request on July 20th, with the understanding that the applicant will sign into a consent to annexation agreement with the city of Post Falls prior to any development on this site. With that being said, staff supports the hearing examiner's analysis and no longer believes that the initial comments or the initial position that staff took is valuable, or we believe it should be void. I don't have anything else to add to this unless you have any questions for staff.
Questions?
Yeah, I just want to confirm that there will be an agreement to get annexed into Post Falls as part of the approval.
That is correct, Commissioner Matari. There is a condition of approval in the HE recommendation. It's condition 8.18, which states that the applicant shall comply with all applicable and enforceable provisions requested by the city of Post Falls within the consent and annexation agreement dated July 13th, 2023, and it references the exhibit number. Said document shall be signed by all parties prior to issuance of any development permits on site.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
So Vlad, my understanding is they're going to have a septic field, but then when they're annexed in the city, they're then going to have to pay to hook up to sewer.
That is correct. There is also a condition of approval that requires that they have a dry sewer stub out
Okay.
in coordination, or the location of that should be coordinated with the city of Post Falls. Whenever that annexation becomes available or feasible, the applicant will have to comply with that agreement, and that dry stub out will have to be connected to the sewer main.
Thank you. All right, thoughts?
My initial thought is that I'm okay with it as long as there is a process to move the property into the city of Post Falls, largely to avoid the patchwork of these little pieces of property throughout the county that we're responsible for law enforcement and things like that, because they'll never end up being annexed. And I just see that as a excessive burden to the county in the long run. But if that's the intention, it seems like the developer wants to follow all the rules.
Okay. Yep. Motion?
I move that we approve CUP 22-0017 Crossroads Storage.
Second.
Commissioner Matari?
Aye.
Chair Duncan?
Aye. All right, project's approved. Item 2, ORA 23-0001, the LUDC Title 8 Amendment regarding code enforcement. And we did not get anything, any updated documents in our hand this morning, but I think Pat is willing to walk us through some stuff. I may still recommend, since Commissioner Brooks is not
In
here,
fact,
that
if
we.
I could maybe trade lab places and I can just put it up on the screen. Here we go. Okay. Is the mic on somewhere? Pat Brady, Civil Deputy Prosecutor for the record. This is case number ORA 23-0001, certain amendments to our code enforcement certain amendments to the code enforcement provisions of the Land Use and Development Code. The changes would be to section 88601 regarding just allowing initial notices of violation where there's no stop work order associated with it to be mailed by first-class mail with stop work orders and associated notices of violation mailed by certified mail, and all recorded notices of violation mailed by certified mail. This will help save money from mailing regular mail versus certified, and while making sure the more important ones are mailed certified mail. And then just renumbering of the note of the next subsection after that. The second one, which was the one the commissioners described after the public hearing that was held on this matter, 88603, I have endeavored to show those changes in yellow highlight. This would only allow the director to impose a civil penalty if the violation has been recorded. That came up in Pat Miller's testimony at the public hearing, so I've reflected that here. And then Commissioner Matari, after discussion regarding judicial imposition of the civil penalties and the fact that once that's recorded, that becomes a lien against the property, I included language that he had requested regarding prohibiting abatement of the property or foreclosure on that lien unless the property has been found to be a public, and I added moral nuisance, both terms of which are in state statute and are adopted as such by the Land Use and Development Code as well, by a court of competent jurisdiction. In other words, the court will both have to impose the penalties and find the property is a public or moral nuisance in order for that to occur. So with those two changes, I think this is ready for adoption unless this is deliberation, so certainly you could deliberate on it and request any further changes if you like.
What's your opinion?
I think that, this is a significant ordinance and that including Commissioner Brooks in the decision, I think would be appropriate.
Okay.
We'd be talking 2 to 4 weeks roughly.
About 3 weeks, I think, yeah.
3
so-
weeks.
2
That
to
doesn't seem like that would affect things that much.
Right. So, I think it's September 14th, Jennifer?
Yes. It's at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Or, sorry, 10 a.m.
Okay. All right, if that's it on that one, we can,
And with that, I will unplug.
thank you, Pat.
We should probably have a motion to reschedule deliberations to that date, though.
Okay,
I move that we schedule deliberations for ORA 23-0001, the LUDC Title 8 Amendment regarding code enforcement to September 14th, 2023.
second.
Commissioner Matari?
Aye.
Chair Duncan?
Aye. All right, that's been rescheduled. Item 3, MSP 22-0004, Lakestone Estates. And we've had a couple public hearings on this, other discussions. So would you like to go first?
Sure. Assuming we're both in agreement on this, then I know we can conclude this. But, this subdivision to me was an unusual situation because normally the surrounding community is usually against new development. But this time the community was very welcoming of the idea of having prospective new neighbors. The main issue, surprisingly enough, against this new subdivision was not with more density, but rather a road through it for emergency vehicles. So because of this community feedback, the BOCC attempted to address the issue by kicking it back to the Highway District to approve a gate for emergency access. In hindsight, it probably was not the most feasible option given that there is judiciary precedent against such gates on roads. Consequently, the Highway District opted for a compromise to make the road one-way and return the subdivision back to the BOCC for a decision. The community did not agree, and as such, the community sought for the BOCC to remain steadfast in requiring a gate. Unfortunately, the problem now is that people don't like the rules that apply here. The developer followed all the rules, even when it caused significant delays. And further, the rules established that there were plans for a throughway from that neighborhood to the proposed subdivision, and after decades, that was becoming a reality. While I agree that there should be a throughway for both emergency vehicles and a second way for residents to egress, especially when you look at the significant fire hazards associated with this area, I believe it does not have to be a convenient way for people to drive through that part of the neighborhood. There are options that could perhaps be explored with the Highway District, like reducing the width of the road and adding multiple speed bumps that could discourage additional traffic on that new road. To understand how such a throughway can affect a neighborhood, one only needs to look at Walnut Street between Highway 95 and Government Way. The number of signs people put out on the street to drive slower, the amount of speed enforcement there gives just about anyone an idea of how challenging these situations can be for residents. The reality, though, is that the BOCC cannot arbitrarily change or go against established rules because the community doesn't like them. And I believe that would ultimately create a precedent that could be detrimental to the community, but also lead to costly litigation the county would have a high likelihood of losing. Instead, the community needs to focus on changing the rules, I believe. And fortunately, the state has provided a mechanism for that to occur. And as elected officials, it is our duty, I believe, to listen to the community and ensure that the current rules are a reflection of the sentiment of the community. This is something I'm looking forward to working on in the coming months. Additionally, and according to feedback from the community, there is a remedy to address elected officials who are not willing to listen, and that is to replace the tone-deaf ones in the next election. So the BOCC heard the community and attempted to address its concern about the road within the confines of the rules. And we cannot arbitrarily change them, so consequently, I support approving this subdivision and respectfully request that the developer work with the Highway District for approval on other ideas that could discourage additional traffic from the existing neighborhood through the new subdivision. That's where I'm at.
All right. Highway districts have authority in matters under their jurisdiction, and the districts are separate taxing entities within the county with elected commissioners. For the BOCC to overrule their requirements would be to shut down the project completely. It's like ignoring the fire department requests and subdivision applications. The highway districts are subject matter experts, and their commissioners can be recalled or voted out at the next election. The Lakes Highway District has not given the BOCC the choice to require a gate. The matter before me, has this subdivision met the requirements to be approved? The matter is not the demands of the neighborhood. When a subdivision or other land use is allowed by right in the zone, it should be approved. For a minute, consider conditional use permits. The CUP request is not allowed by right, but by conditions. In the CUP case, the neighbor's comments are weighted strongly, yet differently than in a use by right application. So does the applicant's subdivision request align with Idaho and U.S. constitutions? Yes. Does it limit government overreach? Yes. Does it comply with state statute? Yes. Does it honor the right of the property owner to exercise his right to life, liberty, and property? Yes. One should be particularly careful when applying rights to individuals versus the greater good or the masses. We live in a constitutional republic, not a democracy. If the issue is allowed by law, then it should be granted based on all the circumstances in that law, in this case, the Land Use and Development Code. A democracy or mob rule is where the majority is given deference over the rule of law. Public safety will be enhanced according to first responding agencies with the one-way street due to the access granted to first responders in the event of fire or other dire emergencies. I hear and recognize the fear that the people have of losing their lifestyles if this one-way road is approved. In the almost 5 years I have been making land use decisions, I cannot recall one approval where the fear expressed in the meetings has come true. If residents want to challenge this decision, I recommend waiting until a year after all the lots have been occupied to see really what the effect will be. So I would also echo Commissioner Matari on working with the applicant, working with the highway districts to see if there is some other ability to discourage maybe that traffic. But once again, the people south of the development are the ones who are having problems with it, so they don't have to use it. So they can continue using what they have already established as their pattern. So is there a motion?
I move that we approve MSP 22-0004 Lakestone Estates.
Second.
Commissioner Matari?
Aye.
Chair Duncan?
Aye. All right, MSP 22-0004 Lakestone Estates has been approved. And we have no business meetings. Vlad?
You can clarify your motion, I'm sorry, your motion, you're striking the gate requirement. Are you opposing the one-way street, or you're leaving that option off the table?
I think the option was to have the one-way, which is what the highway district had said was what was needed to be approved on their end. And so we're approving it with that condition.
And Chair Duncan, do you concur?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so that should be a clarification. Yeah, no gate, but with the one-way that the highway district.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
Yep. All right, no business items. 9:24, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioners.